Most of my day-to-day work has actually not been super revolutionized by AI. It ends up feeling almost like a weaponized version of copy and paste.
There's more to being a software engineer than the act of coding. If you're a weaker coder, we can fix that. I can go enough PRs with you, you'll get it eventually. I'm much more worried about the way of thinking, the systemic way of understanding, like, I have this issue, what is that problem? Can you properly identify the problem?
I don't see it as all hope is lost for software engineers. We should all throw in the towel and let Claude Code take over.
Dude, Clippy was ahead of its time, like 25 years early. How many Andrews do you think we could get into one podcast? Like, is there a statutory limit?
Thought bubble. Like, at what point does it become like illegal?
Well, it's just like a bandwidth issue. Like, how many Andrews can you cram into one show? We have a very special episode today because we are joined by not one, but two other Andrews. Two smarter and better looking Andrews, honestly.
And it won't be confusing at all.
And it won't be confusing. We have 4 Andrews on the show. We should probably say what the show is.
This is Product Fridays. I'm Andrew McGill.
I'm Andrew Phelps.
I'm Andrew Breeze.
Yeah.
And I'm Andrew Milligan.
Okay. So the reason we have all these Andrews on this call is because, Phelps, you and I had a conversation in the last episode about how we code with AI. And we kind of got to thinking, like, there are better coders out there than us. And I'm like, Andrew, I actually know 2 of them. And guess what? Their names also are Andrew. Andrew Breeze, what are you up to these days? Where do you work?
So I work at Politico, where we first met, and I'm running a small team in the newsroom that really focuses on how to use technology to help out journalists, reporters, and other kind of news gathering and reporting needs. And so when AI was the big new fad, my team jumped on that to say, okay, cool, we're used to using technology to help reporters. How do we now use this new technology to help reporters and journalists? So that's what I've been up to.
Let's flip over to Milligan, who I also met at Politico. What are you up to these days, Milligan?
Yeah, so these days I'm a software engineer at a nonprofit called Earth Genome. We do a combination of product design and development, mostly centered around Earth observation data. So satellite imagery, greenhouse gas emissions data, air pollution, all with the goal of making that understandable, meaningful, and ultimately actionable.
I would make some joke about, like, hot air from Washington was your job before, and now it's hot air and the climate bad. Didn't really think it through. The reason that I have these guys on the call is because these two, like, I would go to these guys when I had questions previously, and I'm finding myself more and more going to AI, and I'm wondering, I'm so curious how it's changed your lives, other Andrews.
Yeah, in my real job, the main one is I don't go to Stack Overflow anymore. Everything is in my little sidebar. I'm not a cursor guy. I'll throw in a new competitor most folks haven't heard of called Zed. I'm a big Zed proponent. And I have, has a little sidebar. I can ask it questions. It can suggest changes. And so, anytime I have a utility that I don't want to write, this week I've been dealing with time zones, which is every developer's favorite thing to deal with. And I, been working, one of the things, Politico now a global company. And so I now have to work on tools that can be used in California and in Brussels, which just means that everything needs to be localized at a level that I used to just ignore and just say everyone's going to work in Eastern time because we said so, but now we gotta expand that. So luckily AI has made that way easier. I don't need to download whatever the latest giant data library is to use in my JavaScript. I can just have AI write some very custom, very bespoke JavaScript for me in order to do whatever time zone thing I need to deal with.
A quick clarifying question. Is this app called Z and you're using the British way of saying Zed, or is it actually like ZED?
No, it is ZED.
Okay, because people are going to go looking for that. So okay,
yeah, it's it's open source. They have like another model, but what I really love about Zed is it lets you connect to your existing AI provider. So it really works for a corporate situation like we're in, where we already have tokens from an AI provider, and I can just use those same tokens in my code editor.
Well, and Breeze has always been open source guy in every way possible, so I'm not surprised by that. Let me flip over to Milligan and ask the same question. Like, what's the one thing, if you had to pick one, that AI has made easier for you?
I found that most of my day-to-day work has actually not been super revolutionized by AI. I have been doing a fair amount of my work in Cursor. I don't find myself going to, prompt-based code generation hardly ever. But, to piggyback on what Bree said about Stack Overflow, I find myself going to, ChatGPT, for example, when I'm picking up a new library rather than, in the past, I would have been going straight to documentation more. And it's often a much easier first stop to just have a little conversation with a bot and get started that way.
I don't know how Stack Overflow is going to survive this, but I actually want to drill in really quickly on something you said, Milligan, which is that you are not really using AI to generate code. On the other end, I'm hearing Breeze. He's having the hand roll like time zone functions, right? Why aren't you doing that? What's making you decide not to?
I think it's a combination of partly a little bit of stubbornness on my part. I'm very accustomed to how I approach problems. I find that one of the big factors of that is writing some code in order to understand the problem that I'm trying to solve. And if I skip over that initial writing phase, it's way easier for me to get really far down a path before I step back and sort of realize that this isn't what I wanted to do at all. I think another piece of it is I've had a lot of mixed experiences, I would say, with some of the code generation. And in a lot of cases, it ends up feeling almost like a weaponized version of copy and paste, where I'll end up with way more code than I need, way more verbosely, or like rewriting things that should be coming from a library or from some other utility elsewhere in my code base. A lot of stuff that I would say, could get better over time. But for the moment, I haven't found a huge value add in that.
I want to dig into something we didn't talk about last week, which is collaborating with other humans, because Andrew Milligan, Andrew Breeze, I believe you both work in team environments. You're probably playing leadership roles. I'm curious how AI shows up in a team environment when it's not just you and an agent working through a problem, but a lot of people working through a problem. I'm curious to hear from Breeze first on this one.
Yeah, I mean, one area that the higher up I've gone in my career, the less code I write and the more code I review, which is maybe unfortunate. But I've really loved the idea of using AI to do code review, and I've kind of gone a little bit of a journey as the tools have evolved. So originally I used to get a PR in a pull request, which is when another coder will say, "Hey, can you review these changes I want to make to the code base?" And I would take that, I would open up the diff view, which basically, normally humans have tools to make these reviews that are nice and formatted. And then there's the raw version that is just all text and no colors and no nothing, but very easy to just throw that into ChatGPT. And for a while, I used to do that. I used to be like, "Hey, ChatGPT, I have to review this. Can you give me a first once over?" And then I would, if it gave me good suggestions, I would copy that into my review. But recently, actually, starting this week, I did it for the first time. OpenAI released Codex as a GitHub extension, which means without having anything else installed on any of my GitHub, which is the tool we use to manage the code base, anytime someone submits a pull request, I can just @Codex and say "Hey, take a look at this for me." And it will actually leave comments on the pull request. You can take those comments or leave it, but it actually then highlights in this part of the code, I think you should be doing this. And I used it again, first time this week, and it did catch something that I missed when I was coding, something I forgot to implement that wouldn't have crashed things, but was a behavior that was unexpected. And without me even telling it, ChatGPT or Codex or whatever figured out hey, I'm pretty sure you would want it to go down this path, and it will never do that because of the way you've changed this and you forgot to do this other thing. And I was like, oh wait, that's an incredible, nuanced, suggestion that maybe a human
galaxy
would have caught that.
brain.
Yeah, it was also deep enough that it was like this over here is calling this function, which is calling this function, and it's passing this kind of data. So by the time it makes it to here, it won't look like that. And I was like, wow, how did you even realize that? That's like, it was like 6 layers of separation. It's like Clippy, if Clippy was actually helpful. You know, I was like, did you mean to send an error message function? And I was like, yes, I did, Codex. Thank you.
Dude, Clippy was ahead of its time, like 25 years early. Andrew Milligan, do you have developers who are using AI to write code? Or are they using it more than you are? How does that work? How are you playing manager and code reviewer?
So there's across the team, there's like a wide sort of range, I would say, of approaches. One thing that we have had a lot of success with is spinning up prototypes of things very quickly, right? The kind of situation where you really don't care about the particulars of the code quality. This is probably not any, specific code that you're going to use in the long run anyway. You just want to get an idea up and running on the page. And so for, greenfielding some new project, some people have found that to be really, really helpful and really useful. We have integrated the Cursor bug bot into our PRs. So it doesn't do every PR, but it does some sampling of them. I think similar to what Breeze said, some of the things that it has found are like really helpful and really insightful, even if it's not often exactly identifying what is wrong or why. We're still really exploring the right way to incorporate all these tools into our workflows, and it definitely doesn't feel like there's one right approach and everybody's kind of settled into the right way to do things yet.
Yeah, I feel like I'm coming to like a philosophy just in this conversation about where everyone's personal center of gravity sits with AI. And I would propose there's kind of 3 different places it could lie. One is in the very beginning, architecting, discussing, figuring out the game plan, the technical build plan. And the other is kind of in the middle. We're using it to actively code. It's spinning up pages and functions. And maybe this is, all the way from vibe coding down to even something much less than that. But what I'm adding a new center of gravity, is the code review. And I'm coming to believe that this is something I should be doing more, which is, it seems like you guys who are super talented are getting incredible value over having AI review your code after the fact and point out holes.
Yeah, I would say that that's right. And where I would say like it seems like it pretty clearly adds a significant value is if you're treating it as like this is a first pass on my code, or if it's code that nobody else is going to review, right? Like I work on like personal projects all the time that I'm the only one and there's no code review of that. So like having a stand-in for a teammate to like just put a second pair of eyes on your code is super valuable.
Yeah, hearing this makes me think, how it is when you're building prototypes for yourself and you make all these little weird choices that you just keep in your head. Like, yeah, I know this is oddly named, but like I remember what that means. And then when you're working with AI to edit or regenerate code, there's all this explanation that I'm finding myself doing where I'm like, okay, I know this is weird, and it keeps getting confused over and over again. And I'm realizing I need to just write this so that it makes more sense to another person. And in this case, that other person is Codex. So it's annoying when I'm trying to move fast, but it's actually really valuable because it'll probably make the code better a few versions from now.
Yeah, it's a classic case of not naming your variables A, B, and C as much as you can.
Yeah, foo equals bar, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Let me move to philosophy real quick. Maybe we'll sit in this space for a second. Like, I know a listener to this podcast was texting with and darkly remarked at one point that AI is just basically going to wreck the profession of software engineering. Which we've read a million takes on that as well, which with the calculation that you just won't need as many people to produce the same amount or even more software. And I would love to be hard-hearted. I'm going to turn to Breeze, who sometimes is the pessimist on my shoulder. Like, do you think this is true, and what parts of it are true?
Yeah, sorry to disappoint the maybe expectation for pessimism. My thought on this is, we've made things more efficient in coding like many times over the years, right? We're not like punching punch cards anymore and like feeding that into a mainframe. Like we have like cloud computing, and we have even JavaScript as a language, right? Which many of us here use is much easier to use than before. And like I remember my PHP days and like how terrible it was, and like to deal with that, and it's so much better now. And like with every level of efficiency, like yes, you need less software engineers to produce the same amount of software, right, or websites or whatever the thing is here. But I think like what we've seen is not that has happened with all of these other efficiency gains. What we've seen is more software, right? Everything is software now. There's tons of more websites, tons of more tools, and like I think there's a world where, you know, if AI lowers the barrier and AI can be like trusted to do it well, we can get many more folks creating one-off projects, or, you know, solving very niche needs that maybe are not profitable enough right now if you had to hire like a full software engineering team to do that. And so I think like there's a lot of excitement there. The danger, of course, right now is that there's a little bit of what you don't know is what's going to come haunt you happening with AI. And, you know, we've seen things or heard things of like people deploying things and like the OPSEC, right? Security of those systems are not properly secure enough, and the person who's doing it doesn't know enough to know that that's the case, and like you run into weird issues like that. But I do think there are ways to like create systems such that you can kind of vibe code things and still like make sure that all the dangerous parts of your code are being handled by people or some service that actually knows what they're doing. So yeah, I mean, I guess to the optimistic view of that is like, yes, it will be easier to produce things.
Can I do a little prompt injection and bounce off of that as we go to Andrew Milligan? Because you two are sometimes in the position of hiring, possibly hiring young people, junior people, maybe people right out of school. Is this a great time to have no engineering experience, a bad time, both?
Yeah, that's a great question and a tough question. I think that just as democratizing access to software generation and software production is like great at bringing, you know, more people into the mix, more, you know, contributions to the table. I think there will always be the need for people who know how the systems work, know how, you know, the changes that they're making are why they're good, what the purpose behind them is, and how they're going to affect the rest of the ecosystem that they're working within. And I don't see it as like all hope is lost for software engineers. We should all throw in the towel and let Claude Code take over. Like with any new tools that you know, come onto the scene, you know, I'm in the world of web development, so like thinking about, you know, when React came out, right, there was a lot of kind of resistance to this new paradigm of UI development. But like an important thing for everybody in the space was to come to terms with that, think about it, understand how it works, and see how it can apply to their use case.
I feel a metaphor coming on. I was talking to my cousin on my wife's side a few days ago, and I was mentioning how I bike with my daughter to school. And I was like, yeah, I got the e-bike. He's like, oh, e-bike? That's not biking. And I think that's so funny because I felt that myself at some points. I feel like I'm cheating by using my e-bike. I'm like, I should be on my regular bike and dragging her butt on a trailer. And I'm like, wait, the whole point of the bike is not so I can pedal and turn a gear shift or whatever and, you know, expend this amount of calories. It's so I can get from point A to point B, and ideally like as easily as I can. And the e-bike makes that way simpler for me because lugging her backpack and her is not necessarily light. The metaphor isn't perfectly cooked, but I feel like there's the same impulse we all have to look at the easier version and say that's the wrong way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, if I could inject some pessimism, since you prompted me there to do so.
Finally,
you know, I do think one thing just like everyone has to be aware of when they're using AI is that there is something lost. The best example I heard someone explain in the context of AI was like, we had Google Maps, and suddenly now no one can navigate anywhere, really, without Google Maps. And most folks, I think, would say, that's okay. I am probably not going to be in a situation where I'm going to need to navigate a city that well. I'm okay just relying on Google Maps for the rest of my life. And I do think it's important for us to make sure we're making conscious decisions when we're deploying AI, that we are okay with that, right? If I get to the place where I'm using it to write my utility function around time zones, I am further entrenching my inability to properly code around time zones, and I'm okay with that. I've given up on trying to understand or trying to figure out the best way to do this.
No one ever knew how to do it before anyway. So.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I'm okay with that, right? And that's one thing, right? But similarly, if you're relying it on architecting your code base, you have to be okay with you're not going to get better, and you're probably going to get worse, and you're probably going to get more reliant. And maybe that's okay because you didn't have time to architect it anyway beforehand. So who cares? But I think there is a little bit of to your bike thing, right? The more you rely on an e-bike, the harder it's going to be if that battery dies one day.
Just a quick final question on this, which is, if you're giving someone a code test or you're trying to understand how they think, how do you evaluate that candidate when they presumably, unless you're telling them, do not use AI to support your answer? I know I hear from companies who do that, and I hear from companies say, please use AI, show us how you use AI. But how do you evaluate the way someone thinks if they're outsourcing part of that to a bot?
Yeah, I mean, I would argue, as someone who has never believed in code tests, that the code tests were already not a great measure of whether someone would be successful on your team or not, especially I think in team environments. I'm curious other Andrews here who've hired folks if they would agree. But to Milligan's point, there's more to coding. There's more to being a software engineer than the act of coding. And in many ways, I've always thought that the act of coding is the easiest part to teach. If you're a weaker coder, we can fix that. I can go enough PRs with you, you'll get it eventually. I'm much more worried about the way of thinking, the systemic way of understanding, in order to solve this, I have this issue. What is that problem? Can you properly identify the problem? Can you properly identify the steps needed to solve that problem? And can you properly identify what are the fundamental programming paradigms? And I'm talking things as simple as loops, conditional statements, variables. Can you properly identify those steps needed to solve the problem that you're trying to do? And maybe the AI would help with that, but on part of me, I'm okay, well, fine. If you're going to be reliant on AI the rest of your life, that's on you. I don't care, right? If the result as your boss is that you get the same work done, whatever.
Andrew Milligan, your very quick take on that.
Yeah, I would say, as flawed as they are, things like a whiteboarding problem do a little bit better of a job, I think, at getting at how somebody approaches a problem, how somebody is thinking about, what they're trying to accomplish, how that breaks down and simplifies into smaller pieces that they can, approach individually. Hiring has always been difficult, and any interview process is an imperfect measure of somebody's ability to do the job.
Cool. Well, I knew if we got 4 Andrews together, magic would happen, and it did. So thank you to all of you. This has been Product Fridays, the 4 Andrews edition. So I want to thank you guys for coming.
Thank you so much, guys. This was awesome.
Thanks for having us.
I also want to apologize because you guys have to now listen to us read some poetry.
Yeah, we got some business to take care of. We made a promise to our listeners that if they would write a review of our show on Apple Podcasts, we in return would write and recite a limerick in their honor. And I'm thrilled to say that we have more reviews than we have time for limericks. So we're going to do 2.
So this one is going to go to username Davis Shaver, who I can only assume is friend of the pod, Davis Shaver, who was a friend and a classmate of mine from Penn State.
Talented guy.
It's funny, Davis was actually a hated rival for a time. I worked at the Penn State student newspaper, and Davis founded a competing digital-only news publication, which when you look back was really forward-looking. So my limerick is actually kind of a mea culpa. To one esteemed Davis Shaver, I make amends for my misbehavior because for a few years in college, I was high on my own knowledge And so now I salute your endeavor.
Oh my gosh. I think endeavor is
Decent.
close enough to misbehavior, right?
Yeah, I could have Shiva, endeavor.
Oh yeah, Shava and Deva. That's impressive. Can I just say, well, thank you, David Shaver, for writing your review. It is really hard to write limericks. I feel like we all had to write one limerick in 7th grade and I've not have it since. I would like to honor a user who I don't know, and we will see how that goes now. There once was a fan, Pearly Sanchez. They loved our show. What are the chances? Their words made us beam. 'Twas the best kind of dream for podcasters taking big chances.
Oh, okay. Judges panel. Breeze, you go first. Who did the better limerick?
I feel like the rhyming is better on the Phelps side. Granted, I think he had an easier word to rhyme with. The decision to end the first line with Schaefer, I think, really set you up for a difficult task for all of the rest of the lines. It's a hard group.
To be clear, not a lot of rhymes with Sanchez. Chances is a near rhyme at best. It was either Blanches or Avalanches.
Someone went to rhymingdictionary.com.
Yeah.
I went deep in rhyme zone.
Milligan, who do you pick to win this week's limerick contest?
I'm going to throw my coin to you for the personal and specific content, which is maybe cheating because you know who who the commenter was, but I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, a bit of vulnerability. I will extend the offer yet again. If you leave a review on Apple Podcasts, we will write you a limerick. It helps us spread the word of the show. It helps you get a cool limerick. We'd really appreciate it.
And now I think we should all on the show with our signature sign off, which is Happy Friday. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1.
Happy Friday.